Hello, this is part 2 and the final part of Shrubbery, like me trying to understand Shrubbery. We get into these things. We talk about promoting the nodes of the file system, giving it the abilities that end up making them more like apps. We end up like taking pieces of what an app is, especially like what it remembers, and putting it into the namespace. And that allows it to totally meld this idea of an app and namespace into one single thing. And then we realize once you do that, you have to coordinate between the different parts. And so we talk about the protocol for that namespace. And then we have Liam's Axioms. At the very end, I nod to Liam's Axioms and point you to the people who know what they're talking about. So because I want to get this right, it should be very clear. Like, I am not a guy who knows. I am not a guy in charge. I am not even like really involved. Hey, I'm not the guy. I'm Ben Brown, nordus-mocwyl on the network. This is another Urbit video. I have set up a fund for the most hardcore of you, the most interested in these videos. You can send me some crypto dollars, and that will motivate me to make as many of these videos as I can before the end of the year. And you can know that half of what I'm given goes to Give Directly, my favorite charity. Yeah. I will say adieu. I'm going to drink a tall glass of water and cool down. So go enjoy the video. Part 2 of Shrubbery. Let's get this started. Beep. Chuckity chuckity. Oink oink. Yep, it's working. Oink oink, he says. Doesn't look as bad as I thought. I mean, maybe it will whenever I finally blow it up, but this is like a crinkly shirt. Hey, good afternoon. This is the same day I have returned. It is now really hot. We are approaching what I typically call nap time, between 2:30 and 4:30. And so maybe we'll take it chill. Well, the chickens are now back indoors. You guys want to see the chickens? Hey. This is Snoop. He's bigger. He's bigger than he was before. And they do have sharp talons. Snoop was being bullied because he's smallest. He wants to go. Hey. And this one is Ezri. Ezri was like feeling lethargic and blah and not looking so good. And so we brought her in yesterday to see if she needed any help. So they can get like eggs stuck up in there, and you gotta like go explore and see if you can find an egg. But she seems like she's doing better. Got an Epsom salt bath. Then their tail's all droopy. It's actually nice and perked up. She wasn't moving around, wasn't really eating. So today she's eating better. Feeling better, Ezri. Fun fact, Ezri is named after a character in Deep Space Nine. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. You know that? That's Ezri. Hopefully she'll feel better soon. There was stuff to clean up. All right, they're back up. Note for the chicken experts out there. Bringing in the bullied chicken doesn't necessarily fix the problem, because they'll just kind of lose their rank in the pecking order and probably won't change anything. So to get started, let's download Shrubbery. Unless things have changed, you install it from the Galaxy Met, and it's called Neo because it's going to change everything. Let me double check. Uffa-duffa. Scree. Screw. Do you remember like Angry Beavers? Yeah. Where the heck did they get that? Turns out that is the noise beavers make. This is freaking beavers. Let's assume it's the exact same thing. Here we go. Just cut all that out. Beginning install into Neo from Met Neo. So check it out. There's a Galaxy. Tiny little name. Very, very valuable. It's got a desk, Neo. It has now created a desk on my ship here. It'll be my ship name and Neo. Hey, you. So we are downloading everything. Is this all the files? Yeah, here we go. Downloading update. Finished downloading. Now we're going to merge. So we're going to take what we got from Met's Neo. We're going to merge it into our own, which is literally just means like replacing it. I know this now because I've dug pretty deep in that thing, but it just replaces it, puts in all the new files. So in the installing, here's all the different paths. Neo, COD, standard, all these things. All those files have been insert it in. We are waiting on something. I'm not sure what that is. All right, let's see what we got. We got some fails here, but that's okay. Gall has booted Neo. Just the last video, we learned that Gall runs the apps. So since Neo is an app, it has booted it up. And let's go ahead and mount Neo. By default, the Urbit files you're not able to see them in your standard file system. So to make them visible, you have to mount them, which also makes them vulnerable, susceptible. What's the positive version of that? Capable of being affected by changes in the regular laptop file system. You mount it, then you're able to see it, and you're able to change it. Then you can go back to Urbit and be like, commit these changes, save it. It'll increment up the desk. Let's see here. We've got an app, libmar, Sir, and then Neo. Neo has its own special things. Sir files, pretty standard things, with the exception of Neo Sir file. It's always good to start in the structure file to understand what's going on. And, developers know this, so they can add notes. Neo, new shrub. Urbit is a namespace from path to data. Here you go. Here's this is a chat. Here's another path to this is a message inside that chat. Neo is a recipe for defining the kinds of data that live at these paths. For instance, you would maybe like to define a chat data type that could be bound into your namespace so that your friends could send you memes. So great. Now we have something to mess with. We double check that we have it. Oh, here we go. Now we've got our sky. This is where they would want you to start looking at Shrub. This very nice representation of this namespace that also has apps. I appreciate how non-opinionated it is. There's a lot to work with here. Fun stuff. That'll be for later. I like this. This is very nice. Let's see how Shrubbery obliterates the notion of an app. First of all, let's just go into the idea of an app. Why the heck not? Just a standard app, a regular app, a Gall app, as people will call it. So a standard app, let's take the app home. We've talked about this before, but generally, when it comes to an app, the app is remembering something. It's got stuff written down. Maybe for the sake of what we were doing before, the app is a tree that is remembering a bunch of junk. A lot of times what you want to do is you want to give it a nice good poke. And then maybe what you want to do is you want to have things change. You want that to, you want to delete that. You want to make this thing a branch over here. Cool. Now it remembers that new change. Often, along with that kind of change, you also want it to be doing something. So maybe it has a poke out, or there's other kind of output. It maybe wants to go and talk to some other part of your system. So then it can have a little out poke. Often it's called effect. And you just generally do that, poke. All right, cool. Here's a change that I wanted. Out. Maybe it's going to another app and poking it and changing it, what it's doing, and who knows, maybe it comes back and it's oh, you need to update this part of your tree. It's oh, okay, cool. Out, get another poke, do something like that, there's another effect, this kind of stuff. And that's an app. There's a program that remembers stuff. When it receives information, receives stuff, it makes a decision about it. It changes what it's remembering, and it sends out its own influence to the outside world, if it even wants to. This is optional. It may or may not want to do that. That's a basic app. For instance, in the home app, it is remembering my podcast, my pod tree. If I get a poke that's somebody's going to homebase.com/cast, my app gets the, hey, you need to handle this. Somebody's looking at homebase.com/cast. What do I need to do? And it's oh, cool. Okay, well, I'm going to crank on this. I'm going to make some decisions. And it's okay, you told me things inside that poke. Where should I be sending this thing? What are they wanting? The cast thing. Okay, cool. It thinks about it. And then it converts this podcast into a standard RSS feed. And then it sends it through the different pipelines that it needs to of the Urbit. So eventually the out is the RSS feed. Doodle-doodle-doo. And then somebody can watch that in a podcast. So my app got an input. Transformed what it was remembering in its head, and now it is sending out a change into the outside world in effect, so that somebody can catch it in another app that is remembering stuff and doing all these changes. Okay, that's cool. that's all right. So one question that you might ask is it's like, where is this? Where's what the app is remembering? It's just a tree, right? Because everything is a tree. What's going on with that? What you'll find is this stuff that's being remembered here, this stuff is called state. When it gets updated, when you get a poke and you end up changing things about it, is there like a case number that's incrementing every single time that happens? Honestly, I don't know. I think like Gall handles it in some kind of way. The trick is, in practice, you just go from the state, you have a poke, and you just have a new state. That's all. New state. At least in practice, this like location, the app as it is, it has a state that can be overridden. It just looks like if the state was just a file, it's like that file just changed, just like something just swapped its position. So then now it's not true that if you're pointing in this one place and it's only pointing at one thing, if you want to point at a new thing, you have to change the revision number. Here's a new thing that I'm pointing at. Change the revision number, get a new one. This is the thing that I'm pointing at. In this case, you're pointing at a thing. You're like, this is what the app's remembering. And then whenever you change it, you just change it where it is. And so like that whole pointing at it, it's just one thing, and then that thing's constantly changing. And so whenever you update things or change things with state, like it's a big headache. Big thing. So I'm going to grab the tortilla because I wanted to eat a tortilla. All right. So you might like think about it and be like, well, that looks like a tree. It's just information. What if we just like took that and put that into the namespace? What if we just made that a part of the file system? And in fact, like instead of having one path that goes to the state, why not have every little piece of this thing actually have its own little spot? And then it might occur to you what Shrubbery is. Shrubbery is taking this like state in this app and this being like, hey, put that in the namespace. Let's see what happens. Yeah, and what you end up having is this like not an app, recreation of app. You end up taking things like your file system, every one of these nodes where you have a potential file, where you have a file where you could have a whole lot more things. You end up promoting all of them to potentially become their own little app situation. Each of these can now take in an input and send out an effect. Take in an input, send out an effect. We'll do this one. We're going to be like, hey, you're going to be an important node, my friend. Any one of these nodes can take input and output, but I'm going to specially define the pokes that you take in and the effects that you put out. The stuff that you remember, the stuff that you're going to transform, the stuff that you are going to add to and take away, these are going to be your children, and they are embedded in the namespace. It gets all of the benefits of this helpful way of structuring the names. It gets all of those benefits. To me, I think this is like really beautiful. It's like the practice of programming on Urbit. It affords the chance to build wisdom, to like see through illusion and to get a step closer to reality. So in the Urbit world, because they set up this like very intelligent namespace, when they went to go recreate the notion of an app as understood by other computers, it was one, like successful in doing so, but those apps ran into the same problems as before, like having things changed from out from under you. And so because it's inside of Urbit and because of the way things are shaped, you can actually take a step back and be like, I think we can do this better using those other tools that we already had. Hey, this thing that's giving us trouble, this like state stuff, let's just pump that into the namespace because that's already solving the problem that we're having. And let's promote these nodes to do what's left that the app does that it didn't before. This is a very like fruitful and interesting way of seeing it. And so if we come back over to Shrubbery, like this might be a representation of your Urbit. You have these apps that are in control of all of their children, all in here. The trees inside of these trees, like this is the state of an app or this is the state of the app. Your Urbit can start to grow out in this, like you can have this namespace that's also totally capable, and you end up having this completely extensible thing. Yeah. So once you have that realization, once you kind of explode apps into the namespace, you're going to need a couple of rules. You're going to have to be like, okay, well, if this thing is an app, how is it going to relate to this thing? Because this thing can send out an effect, and that effect can go right into that app. That app can have an effect, and that can go into the input of this app. So you're going to want rules of engagement. You're going to want to create a protocol that makes it so that as this namespace, as these like really capable trees, like this ecosystem of trees, this shrubbery, these trees of trees, and as they're going to talk to each other, you're going to want to create rules about how they engage with each other and how the parents engage with their children. So now we have apps that are not apps, that are every single part of your computer, of which everything is intelligently named so that you can rely on the namespace. And this ends up like throwing out a lot of problems that like you kind of run into as you're doing things. At this point, like it sounds so mystically promising that like it's got like a lot of like too good to be true kind of thoughts. I think some of them will be that good, but we'll see. I think we'll just have to build stuff, and we'll see if I build stuff. All right. Closing this out, I'm going to point you over to Liam's video at Lambda Conference to try to attempt to understand what's going on from the guy himself. It's the way that he's thinking about building inside the system. He's been like thinking through these kind of extra kind of outside ideas that can help like guide like what you're choosing to make children versus making a shrub, or what are you choosing to make new shrub and other kind of things. They mean absolutely nothing to me. I think him talking about it helped me understand where he was coming from for this whole shrubbery situation. But I think this will actually end up meaning a lot more to me when I start building. They're good. I think that's all I needed to, that's all I need to say. Turgid. That is the way that I am thinking about shrubbery. Yeah, we'll see. It's a big deal. I guess we didn't talk about veins. Like if you remember, I was talking about like Clay handles files and Gall handles apps. So you have Clay and you have Gall. These are apps, but like in the deep level, like the basic makeup of your computer, your Urbit. Right now, Neo is inside of Gall. It might end up having a different name when this happens, but there will be a time when it is promoted to be just as fancy, just as deep in the system, and it'll live side by side with these things for a little bit. Yeah, at the same level, and then perhaps these things will just fade away. Then we'll realize Neo is the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know, it's a tricky time as the transition's happening and stuff. Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking about working on this stuff. Okay, I'll see you later, bye. Oh, uh-oh. Hi. What's up? You have an egg? Whoa, she let out an egg! Ezri! Oh, okay, so this is what hers look like. Yay! She must have been egg bound. She let it out. Good for her. Excuse our 101 Dalmatian scenario. But yeah, we've been getting these eggs in the chicken coop, and we assumed it was Ezri. Turns out that was Dax, ironically also named for Deep Space Nine. But this is her egg. These are her eggs. That's what Ezri makes. They're really small, but precious.